To watch more Bhagavad Gita discourse videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Tell me, what is Bhagavad Gita now? Bhagavad Gita is a text which handles even the greatest or highest, the huge grief that man suffers from. And Sri Krishna resolved it and redressed it in a matter of 2.5 hours. I don't know how many people hear me and accept. Suniyana Achitarak. In 2.5 hours, he redressed the grief of Arjuna. And he gave him the right insight, the right objective and goal of life. And Arjuna says, my confusion is gone. Clarity has come. And I am prepared to fight not one Mahabharata war, a dozen or score of them. Sanjaya says, all this is true. I also feel that way. What greater certificate that you want? Or some new institute should conduct an examination? This is what Bhagavad Gita says. Try to analyze the character of the writing, the elegance of the writing, the impenetrable nature of the writing. Now, Krishna wanted to discuss grief and resolve it. Tell me whether it is a contemporary problem or not. Boliye? Huh? Our subject is what? Spiritual excellence? Contemporary life. Life at any point of time upon this earth for the humans always had the problem of grief. And if we are able to resolve grief in our life, I think we have nothing more to get. A griefless life means happiness-full life. If you think of a world darkness-free, is it not luminous? Huh? Will it not be? Suppose you have no grief, you become ecstatic. So here the subject of discussion is grief, grief and grief. Nothing else. Krishna's discussion was specific to Arjuna. At the same time, it was comprehensive and eternal for everybody. That is how Krishna analyzes the human personality on the one hand. He also analyzes the interactional life, the complex nature of the world. And he explains what is the interaction. You know what Krishna said to begin with? Ashocyan anvashojastvam prajna vadamscha bhashase gatasun agatasumscha nanushojanti pandidaha. Arjuna, where are you seated? In the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Who are around you? All fighters. Why have they come here to fight? And what is the result of fight? Either die or kill. Is it any way different? What are our soldiers doing in the border? You tell me. Huh? They are facing the bullets. And they also make the opponents face their bullets. And what can be the outcome? Death or injury. Is it any different? Can it be any different? So this is the nature. So Sri Krishna is analyzing what? Ashocyan anvashojastvam. The first point of reason. See how he is applying the reason, applying the rationality, make the intelligence active and the mind becomes sublimated and subdued in the process. Arjuna, you are grieving over those who should not be grieved at all. Whom are you looking at? Bhishma and Drona. Who are they? One is your teacher, another is your grandfather. Advanced in age, even now ready to fight. Bhishma is unconquerable. Drona also is unconquerable. And they have come here to fight and kill you seemingly. But they are not going to kill, this is a different matter. Now, they are not aggrieved by the war. Why is it that you are aggrieved? Tell me where is the wrong? Boliye na. You have no answer? See, both of them are present in the same battlefield. And they are pleasant, they are cheerful. They give you an open consent to fight. After Arjuna's dialogue, Yudhishthira kept his weapons down and marched straight into the opposite army. Arjuna pulled him back, saying that my brother is going to surrender. Krishna said, no, leave him. He will not do any mistake. Yudhishthira went and prostrated before Bhishma and said, I have come. I want to take blessings and consent from you for fighting. He said, Pridoham putra yudhyasva jayamapnuhi pandava. I am so pleased that you have come. If you had not come, I would have cursed you. Now that you have come, I am pleased. Fight and have victory. What do you say? Were they sorrowful about the war? Huh? Then why is Arjuna looking at them? Why is he becoming sorrowful? Ashocyan anvashochaha. At the same time, you speak big words of wisdom. You know the really wise people? They look at the living and the dead in a like manner. The first lesson of Bhagavad Gita. They look at the dead and the living alike. You know, we are about 700 crores of people upon the earth now living. Can you tell me how many people have lived and gone? 10,000 crores. If all the 10,000 crores were living now, will there be space for ants to crawl? You tell me. What all of you are going to do? What will you do in the end? See, you have no courage to say. I pity you. Arey, what are we going to do in the end? We shall die. Don't you think every day is a death approaching day for us? And a birth distancing day? Yes or no? Am I speaking something wrong or right? Why don't you smile and laugh? 10,000 crores of people have died and only 700 crores are living now. Either people are dead and gone, others are living to die, moving towards death. It's all the same. Suppose you start crying over the dead, should you not cry over the living also? Arey, they have gone, you will go. You have to say, you will go and start crying. I will go and cry. See, look at the life as a wholesome expression. Don't be partial. So develop the right insight. This is what he says. I won't explain it further. Natve vaham jadunasam natvam nehme janadhipaha nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayamatah param. Arjuna, you think that I was born of Devaki. I say it is not so. Biologically, I was born of Devaki. But what I refer to as I and what you refer to as you, it is not a reference to the body, the biological product and outcome. That I is something different. My body was born, but the presence which I refer to as I, which animates the body, is not at all born. It was present before body's birth. It will continue to be present after the body falls. So he puts it in a nice way. Natvevaham jadunasam. There was no time, Arjuna, when I was not. You were not. Bhishma, Drona and the others were not. There is not going to be a time when we shall not be. As we are now, we were and we shall be. This is at least one message that all of you should pick up before going from this hall. You are not the body. You have a body. You put on your dress. Are you the dress? You live in a house. Are you the house? You ride in a car. Are you the car? Similarly, you live in a body, move in a body, but you are not the body. What is that I? It was ever present. Ever present. It will be eternally present. We are carrying in our personality a mortal body and an immortal soul. Please understand this. We are anointed with a mortal and a fleeting body, and equally as its own substratum, a lasting and an immortal presence called the soul, the I. So, Arjuna, it is all a fight between bodies, but never of the soul. This is going to be the insight for you, the solution for you. Otherwise, it is going to be death, en masse death, 4.5 million minus death. Arjuna's sorrow was colossal, immeasurable. He was not able to contain it. So he was being given a wonderful spiritual insight. It is not an insight, a material insight or an energial insight. It was a spiritual insight. Insight about the mind, intelligence, ego, and the spirit as a whole. Then he says, don't consider death to be extinction. It's only a transition. Birth itself was a transition from the womb to the earth. Thereafter, a baby grows. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptihi dhirastatra na muhyadi. One transition after the other already follows here. And ultimately, when it comes to the question of old age, the body is left and another body is taken up if it is necessary. So, rewrite your idea about death. Death is a transition. It is never an extinction. You never lose anything. You never lose anything. Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mrityuhu atyanda vismritihi. Death is full forgetfulness. Every day we sleep and get up the next morning. But from the so-called death sleep, you will never wake up. Others will handle your body, that's all. My dear souls, never fear death. Don't think about it at all. You are born, you are not aware of it. Your body will die, will become breathless, you will not be aware of it. Leave it to nature. As the body was born, as it grew, as it starts declining, and one day it will stop its breath. Leave it to nature. There is no birth without being followed by death. And there is no death without being followed by birth. Let the parampara go on in its own sequence, never interfere with it. So far as life is concerned, Krishna analyzes it beautifully. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhadaha agama payino anityaha tanti dikshasva bharata. Arjuna, this life for anyone, anywhere, at home, in the professional front or in the societal front, in any place whatsoever, life is an interaction. The interaction is always between the individual and the rest of the world. Where are these interactions taking place? They are taking place in the level of the senses. We have 5 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and taste. We don't have a 6th organ. Think of the most primitive man. He also had 5 senses. Now the most modern man also has only 5. He is surrounded by the world, Panchabhutas. The ancient man also was surrounded by the same Panchabhutas. So tell me, is there an iota of change in life? Boliye na. So the discussion Krishna made then in the battlefield of Kurukshetra is equally applicable to you in this celebrated August hall. Life is the same. These words are eternal, ever applicable. This analysis is of human personality on the one hand and world on the other, and the interactions between the two. The entire life is matra sparshaha. Matra means senses, sparsha means things for their contact. So our senses contact the objects, and all interactions are productive or producing these contacts. The world may be numerous, endless. The manifold world objects, they may be manifold in their number, kind, distances, etc. But when you interact with them, they become fivefold. The entire infinite nature, it gets reduced into five. Tell me for what reason? Because we have only five senses. So our senses determine the perception of the world. Am I clear or not? Boliye na. Except Shabda, Sparsha, Rasa, Rupa, Gandha, do you have a sixth experience in this world? Huh? Still you are in doubt? Our senses make the world fivefold. The infinite world is reduced instantly into five. And in the sensory level, the interactions produce what? Sukha, Dukkha, Daha. They produce Sukha and Dukkha, happiness and unhappiness. Actually, the happiness and unhappiness are not felt at the sensory level. There only the contact is born. Sukha and Dukkha are two experiences which the mind produces. When they trickle to the mind level, the mind produces Sukha Dukkhas. No matter what you contact with. If you have only one sensory organ, then also you will have Sukha Dukkhas. If you have 2, 3, 4 or 5 in full, then also Sukha Dukkhas. So all are interactions, and the interactional consequences or results, the resultant experiences are only two. Now tell me, experientially, is the world two or is the world many? आप चुप रहते हैं क्यों? बोलिए ना आप. Can the world give you anything other than Sukha and Dukkha? And these Sukha Dukkha's the world does not give. Your senses and the mind produce. So who is the author of Sukha Dukkha's? Boliye na. Our mind is the author of Sukha Dukkha's. Ask the mind to handle them. Ask the mind to handle them. By what? With the help of intelligence, with Viveka, the right insight. And what is the insight? Agamapayinah anityaha tanti dikshasva bharata. The Sukha Dukkhas come and go. They come only to go. They go only to come. Their job is to come and go. Now you will not go. So my dear Sukha Dukkhas, you come and go. I shall be here to greet you. What else do you have to say? And the Sukha Dukkhas, nature has constructed in such a manner that each is a complement to the other. So if you want to have a Sukha, you must have its complement. What is that complement? Dukkha. So without Dukkha, will you have Sukha? So is Dukkha necessary or not? I have won my game. See, what is Sukha? Sukha is the extinction of Dukkha. And once you have the Sukha, it will lead you to Dukkha. So is it good? Is it not like giving a sumptuous meal to a man just before hanging? Huh? You are afraid to think, is it not? A sumptuous meal is offered with soft words. Please eat, I shall be very happy. So, Agamapayinaha, by making Dukkha indispensably a complement to Sukha, he has taken away the attraction to Sukha. And Dukkha always brings Sukha. So do you welcome it or hate it? We welcome, because Dukkha means arrival of Sukha. So our prejudice towards Dukkha is gone, and our preference towards Sukha also is gone. When both of them are gone, then what is it left aside? That is the even attitude towards both, samatva. This samatva, he says, yoga uchyade. This is the yogic excellence, the spiritual excellence that you must have. Sukha dukkha samam dhiram somrtatvaya kalpade. Be wise enough, be intelligent enough Be discriminating enough, be discreet enough to understand that sukha and dukkha are mutual and complementary to each other. So welcome them, remain afloat. Openly you say, dukkha, I don't dislike you. Sukha, I have no preference for you. Both of you are complements. Come and go as you like. If you don't come and you don't go, then also I am happy. If you come and go, it makes no difference. Can you imagine this transcendental state that you can achieve? Huh? Please understand, it's only reserved for the humans to develop this transcendental outlook. In order to develop it, where do you have to go to? Should you go to the Himalayas and the caves? Every day you are having sukha and dukkha. So welcome them, remain afloat, remain afloat, remain afloat. Just like you learn swimming and remain afloat even in the sea. The waves and the breakers will come in the sea. When the wave comes, just lift your feet. When the breaker comes, dip yourself. Nothing will affect you. This is how you have to take the life bath here in the sea. Agamapayino anityaha tanti dikshasva bharata. See, I told you that Bhagavad Gita analyzes the human personality. I would like you to have an analysis. Normally, I demonstrate it with a PowerPoint presentation, which I have not brought here. Maybe I have shown it earlier. I want to have 2 or 3 more PowerPoints presentation, but whenever I have spoken about it to computer experts, they are not able to produce it in the manner in which I want. See, there is a verse in Bhagavad Gita. It is verse number 42 of the 3rd chapter. Indriyani paranyahu indriyebhyah param manah manasastu parabuddhi yo buddhehe paradastu saha. We have a personality, the human personality, in which the extreme point is the body and the senses. From the senses inward, you can say. So at the sensory level, we interact with the objects of the world. The world does not interact with us. It cannot perceive us. We alone can perceive through the senses. So because the senses are the perceiving agency and the world is an inert object being perceived, the senses are superior to the objects. Do you agree or not? Huh? So at the sensory level, you are superior to the world. Superior to the senses is the mind. Because the mind has to employ the senses. Senses cannot work by themselves. They are inert. Suppose there is a sleeping person. You gently open the eyes and show a bunch of flowers, beautiful. Take the flowers, leave the eyelids, allow him to sleep. Next morning if you ask him, will he say that he has seen? Why? The eyes were open and the objects were held before it. Mind was not there. So the mind is what? Animates the senses and activates them. So the mind is superior to the senses. The mind can only receive sensory imprints but do nothing more. Now to analyze them, consider them, evaluate them and arrive at proper knowledge of good and bad distinctions and the like, the intelligence is required. So the intelligence is superior to the mind. And still superior to the intelligence is that which you call the I. So you tell me, your personality in the sensory level, mental level, intellectual level, and in the I, the soul level, is that personality superior to the world or inferior? If you are superior, behave like that. Why are you ever becoming a slave? Become a master in this world, not a slave. Live and move here with a mastery. Never plead guilty of weakness at all. Have the heroism, have the valor, have the composure, have the beatitude, have all the fullness and abundance that you want. Our body is full with consciousness. There is no place for a speck from the outside world. No object can or does enter into your body. Our mind alone produces happiness. Mind is the source of joy. Joy is an emotion. It belongs to the mind. So if you want to have a joy, ask the mind to produce it and deliver it. That is what spiritual excellence means. We don't want to be interacting with the objects and have joy, always interactional joy. Our joy will come from the mind itself. Mind itself. Mind itself. How is it that you sleep every day for 8 hours, forgetting the whole body? What is the potential of the mind? So understand that senses make the body, make the world 5, mind makes it 2, and when you go into sleep, even the 2 vanish and you dissolve both. Imagine the power, the might and the majesty of your eye. So, as sage Vasishtha told Rama, be a Mahakarta, a Mahabhokta. Become a magnificent performer, an exalted performer, a superlative performer, and also a magnificent enjoyer and sufferer. What? Magnificent enjoyer and sufferer. Our judges deliver different types of message. Whatever case is given, they have to consider and give a judgment. And they give it in terms of propriety as far as they can perceive and give. Whatever be the consequences, a surgeon operates and he amputates the leg of a patient. He has to treat the disease and cure him. What follows, he cannot think of. Then he will not be able to function. Administratively, a lot of decisions will have to be taken, some painful. Even now, our parliament has debated and it has passed a bill. What will be the consequence? Will people really accept? Or see that things have to be done. We should understand it. A ruler, administrative man, this is the most difficult job. So a magnificent performer and a magnificent sufferer. Every time we have to look into the problem and resolve it. Our citizenship has to be finalized today or tomorrow. By postponing it, what are you going to achieve? Every time, whatever is necessary should be done. And sometimes it will be painful also, pleasurable also. This is the fate of administration, fate of jurisprudence. It will be like that. So, a Mahakarta and a Mahabhokta, a mighty performer, a mighty enjoyer, and a mighty sufferer. Don't dread suffering. Don't dread it. You see, I am a sannyasin. When I became a sannyasin, I married poverty. I married austerity. When we accept it beforehand as a choice, it has no effect at all. I always said, what? Our people are enriched by poverty. When I said it, I think he was the Chief Justice of India, Mr. M.N. Ray also. He saw me in Calcutta. Swamiji, why are you saying enriched by poverty? Then I explained to him. What is it that we do? We leave everything and we accept from today onwards we will have no possession, no relatives to support or look to as a succour. I always say, greeted by the streets of India and graced by the invisible providence, I started living and moving on the land of earth. What a wonderful life it was, with no care, no concern, no anxiety. I was floating in the ecstasy of peace. Magnificent sufferer, magnificent enjoyer, and magnificent karta. Your potentials increase, performance enlarges, and the outcomes also are far more beneficial. You always think of the welfare of the world, welfare of the society, not the family and a few members. It's a life of expansion. It's a life of greater expression. It's a life of unity, oneness and fullness, abundance. This is what I understand about spiritual excellence. This is only a spiritual excellence. It is not a material excellence. It is the excellence our mind and an enlightened intelligence together bring about, bestow upon you, without any kind of a scarcity or ration. I shall stop now.
Join our live event on the 10th, 11th and 12th of October 2020. Register at www.globalgeeta.org.